So, without further ado, please help me give a very warm welcome to United States Secretary Deb Haaland.
We're finally at this stage. So the end is near, friends. But when I ran my first marathon, they told me whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So all that sun out there, it's going to make you stronger. Guatsi haupa, duhiname etsatuitsa shuimi hanu. And hello, class of 2024. Interim Dean Goldberg, Dean Ball, Assistant Dean Boak, Alumni Association President Breedlove, faculty, staff, students, families, and guests. I am honored to join you for this most important milestone in the lives of these students. Thank you for the invitation to be a part of this special day. I acknowledge that we are on the ancestral homelands of the Massachusetts people. I also acknowledge the generations of ancestors who stewarded these lands beginning thousands of years prior to European colonization. They persevered so that I could be here with you today. Thank you, Genevieve, for that kind introduction, and congratulations. Congratulations to all of you. I know what it's like to be in your shoes. My law school experience was difficult, but also fulfilling, and I was so happy when it was over. So yes, today, pat yourselves on the back and celebrate this wonderful accomplishment, and tomorrow, there is work to be done. Whether you have a job lined up or plan to pursue another degree or simply want to take a beat to figure out next steps, please know that the knowledge and street smarts you have acquired at this historic institution are meant for one thing and one thing alone: to help move our communities and our world forward, because that is what this era of our country requires of all of us. When I graduated law school, the future and its uncertainties seemed vast. After several decades, 2 degrees, representing New Mexico in Congress, and now serving the American people at the pleasure of the President, I've learned that while uncertainty may be the only thing that can be guaranteed, your commitment to helping others and leaving the ladder down for future generations is what creates your path ahead. To be honest, thinking about my own journey reminds me that institutions like the federal government and higher education were not built for people like me. The fact that I stand here as the first Native American cabinet secretary in our country's history is, in a word, remarkable. But I don't see it as my personal accomplishment. It's one that many indigenous peoples over countless generations worked and sacrificed for. I am here because of them, and I never forget that it's because of their enduring commitment to survival against so many odds that I stand before you today, which is good because I have a lot to say. Our lived experiences create the backbone of who we are, what we bring to the table, and the path we will blaze. To every student here today, your lived experience matters. The question is, what will you do with it? I didn't start my college education until I was 28 years old. I grew up in a home without any college degrees, although my parents were public servants throughout their careers. At school, I seemed to get lost in the ether, and my high school counselors and teachers simply never encouraged me to apply. I eventually enrolled at the University of New Mexico School of Law years later, but because I had spent time at a graduate program in California, the law school charged me out-of-state tuition, adding an additional $18,000 onto my first year. As a single mom, this was devastating news. But with hardship comes innovative ideas. That experience inspired me to get a bill introduced and passed in the New Mexico State Legislature that gave enrolled members of New Mexico tribes in-state tuition, regardless of their residency. I argued, among other points, that Native Americans never lose their residency with their tribes. Unfortunately, the new residency designation that I worked so hard to enact was not retroactive. And so, yes, I am still paying off my student loans. But thank goodness for forbearance, right? My lived experience and perspective, even early in my career, mattered and made a tangible difference for Native American students who needed barriers removed so that they had the opportunity to succeed. I challenge each of you, what will you do with yours? Your perspectives matter to your family and to your people, especially if your people haven't always had a seat at any decision-making table. It is right and just for you to speak up in a room, around a table, in a legal document, or in a courtroom to ensure their voice is heard through you. As you leave your law school years behind and enter your next chapters, always remember to work hard and never let fear stop you, no matter what you pursue. If you're graduating today, you're already fearless. 3Ls should feel empowered because you have endured and maybe even enjoyed bouts of the Socratic method, moot courts, real-time legal experience while in clinic. Many of you may also have dedicated significant time doing pro bono work for various important causes. That fearlessness to tackle something new without holding back applies to everything now, especially in the context of defending what you know is right. As some of you may know, I ran for Congress in 2018. I faced a 6-way primary election, and it took all I had to walk, talk, and write for nearly 18 months straight. I was the candidate, and no one else could stand in for me. I had to show up each day with a smile and, quite frankly, with a prayer. A lot of people didn't think that as a Native woman, I'd win my primary, much less a general election. But anything worth having is worth working hard for. And my hard work proved a lot of people wrong. Yours will too. Through each of these lessons, I've been reminded time and again that every job is important. I mentioned earlier that I started college when I was 28. Between graduating from high school and my late 20s, I worked. I went from part-time to full-time at a local bakery. Alongside me, keeping the bakery humming, were the bakers, the dishwashers, delivery truck drivers, and farmers who made our operation possible. No one in this world does anything alone. At the Department of the Interior, I lead more than 60,000-person staff that crisscrosses our nation and even our globe. My job and the places it takes me reminds me time and again that community has always been and will always be everything. While visiting my ancestral homelands of Chaco Culture National Historical Park in northeastern New Mexico, I learned that between 850 and 1150 AD, Pueblo Bonito, Chaco's largest great house, was constructed with an estimated 100 million pounds of stone. I pictured hundreds of Pueblo peoples gathering stones, making the mud mortar, and hauling water to make it all possible. No one at any point in time has accomplished anything alone. Lean into the beauty of community. At the department, this has rung true repeatedly as we have advanced our administration's mission to tackle the greatest challenges of our lifetimes, including the climate crisis. The things we have achieved have been because of close partnership and collaboration with our legal teams, which at Interior are referred to as solicitors. Late nights, long documents, new policies, old litigation. All of it has the fingerprints of dedicated lawyers who have committed themselves to public service. I share a few of these areas of progress because I believe that many of you have the desire and commitment to serve the American people as they do. At the very top of our priority list is the transition toward a clean energy future. We pursued this since day one of this administration, and I'm deeply proud that the department is playing a leading role. We're doing this through approval of dozens of new renewable energy projects on our nation's public lands that are bringing affordable, clean energy to millions of households. To date, we've permitted an historic 25 gigawatts of onshore clean energy from solar to geothermal to new transmission lines, stretching from California to Arizona to Wyoming, with more under review. That's enough to power more than 12 million homes. Using the power of our ocean, we are building an entirely new offshore wind industry. To date, we've approved the nation's first 8 offshore wind energy projects, enough to power 4 million homes, with more on the way in the coming months. When we see nature as our ally and really act like nature is our ally, we can accomplish tremendous progress for our climate, our planet, and the communities that depend on these natural spaces to thrive every day. For example, expansive restoration progress is taking place across a landscape iconic to the American West, the Sagebrush steppe ecosystem. Spanning over 175 million acres, Sagebrush country contains biological, cultural, and economic resources of national significance. It's home to more than 350 species, including pronghorn, elk, mule deer, and greater sage grouse. America's sagebrush ecosystem is the largest contiguous ecotype in the United States, comprising 1/3 of the landmass of the lower 48 states. But in the last 20 years, half of this area has been lost due to climate change and habitat destruction. Our Sagebrush Keystone Initiative combines community-led conservation with federal partnership to defend and grow the core for future generations to steward. Our Keystone initiatives, from grasslands in Appalachia to drought and wildfire, are sweeping and expansive by design, but at the heart of the framework is collaboration, because we aren't going to get anywhere meaningful if we don't bring every partner to the table. That partnership must include Indian tribes, indigenous peoples. Indigenous knowledge incurred over millennia informs how we build a better world. That extends to how our team addresses the wrongs of the past and how we correct harmful policies and decisions that were designed to eradicate Native peoples. When I announced the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative, I didn't realize that it would become a core legacy issue for our department. Our goal was noble and mighty: to unravel the intergenerational trauma that has plagued our communities since the start of this horrific era. An era that saw Indigenous children, including my grandparents, torn from their families and taken to government-sponsored schools that stripped them of their languages, their cultures, and their lifeways. This is the first time the federal government has researched the details of these schools, the children who attended, and the funding that impacts that assimilation policies had on the children, their families, and their larger communities. I have traveled across the country to bear witness to the many survivors of the boarding school era, to give them space to share their stories, shed their tears, and to know that they are seen and heard. We have so much more to do to reconcile this painful chapter in our nation's history, but our progress is real. The department has also made critical improvements to the implementation of laws like the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, passed over 3 decades ago. The law aims to return sacred objects and the remains of our ancestors to the communities from which they were stolen. stolen from digging up graves of our ancestors, from sacred sites, from people's homes and lands. Despite this essential charge, the law has too often been under-prioritized by universities and museums, including the Peabody Museum right here on campus. In December, though, we announced a final rule that streamlines requirements for institutions to inventory and identify these items, increases accountability, and prioritizes tribal consent. Already, several, including Peabody, are changing the policies and procedures that govern this work. I'm grateful that now, thanks to this collaborative effort, tribes can be reunited with their cultural property and finally lay their ancestors to rest. These are just some of our department's milestones, wins for our climate, our lands and waters, and the communities who depend on these resources every single day. It might be hard to picture the people behind these successes. Well, the fact is, they look like you. Each of you have more power than you realize. You're Harvard Law graduates, for goodness sakes. You have the power to build off these accomplishments and to continue moving our country toward the sustainable, ethical, plentiful future we know is possible for everyone. I know for a fact you're all powerful because Harvard Law graduates and former faculty have helped lead our momentous efforts at the department since day one. Nowhere is that clearer than the work we are doing in Indian country. Guiding us in our work is the solicitor, Bob Anderson. For over a decade, Bob was the Oneida Indian Nation visiting professor of law here at Harvard Law School. His contributions to our team have inspired us all, but one accomplishment in particular is close to my heart. Last year, the Supreme Court stood behind the Indian Child Welfare Act, or ICWA, ending a lawsuit against our department and me that challenged keeping on-reservation child adoptees with their tribes. This was a legal precedent informed by the violent boarding school legacy I spoke of earlier. The horrific impacts of this legacy are more prominent than we realize. In fact, like me, you probably know someone who has been impacted. A dear friend of mine and all 6 of her siblings were adopted out of their family and raised apart. My friend has spent the better part of her adult life working to piece together the family she should have had growing up. This important ICWA decision upheld what presidents and congressional majorities on both sides of the aisle have recognized for the past 4 decades, that Indian children belong with their families and tribes no matter what. That win played out at the Supreme Court, but behind the scenes, Bob and his team worked through countless hours to support the federal government's case that ICWA is and must remain the law of the land. Indian country breathed a collective sigh of relief when the Supreme Court announced its decision, and we have Bob Anderson to thank. Well, Bob Anderson is here with me. Professor Anderson, please stand up and be recognized. Some of the proudest moments during my tenure have come when President Biden has taken decisive action to protect the lands, waters, and wildlife that we depend on every day, and importantly, to do so hand in hand with tribal nations that have stewarded these lands since time immemorial. Many of those wins have been in the form of new national monuments, designated by President Biden at the request of tribes and local communities, many of whom have fought for decades to see these protections materialize. 2 national monuments in particular stand out. Last year, President Biden created Baj Nawabjo Ita Kukveni, Ancestral Footprints of the Grand Canyon National Monument. At nearly 1 million acres, this new national monument protects ancestral homelands sacred to numerous tribal nations, including the Havasupai and Hopi tribes and the Mowapa Band of Paiutes. The President's action, building upon decades of community-led efforts, will now help protect the sacred land and its watershed from encroaching threats like uranium mining and other extractive industries. In southern Nevada, Aviquame National Monument now protects over 500,000 acres, and Spirit Mountain, the most sacred place on earth for the Mojave people. Finalizing these designation recommendations to the President took plenty of grit and dedication from our team. One of our lawyers who was absolutely central to these designations was Natalie Landreth. Natalie, our Deputy Solicitor for Land Resources and class of 2001 Harvard Law graduate, helped to ensure that these monuments will be protected in perpetuity. And she was tireless in her commitment to ensure that tribal perspectives and knowledge were honored in their designations and future management. I'm so pleased that she's here with us today. Everyone, please say hello to Natalie. When I think about the legacy our team is building, I think about entire landscapes, entire regions of our country that are benefiting from our lawyers' determination in the face of complex, often decades-long challenges. Since time immemorial, the tribes of the Columbia River Basin in the Pacific Northwest have relied on abundant and healthy salmon runs for their subsistence and for the health of their cultures. For countless generations, they've passed down their traditions and indigenous knowledge that connected their people inextricably with the river and salmon that gave them everything they needed. Yet for decades, dams built by the Westerners have cut off entire swaths of this region from the salmon that rely on the river to complete their journeys to the sea and back again. This reality threatens not just the health of this iconic ecosystem, but also the health of the communities who have long stewarded these lands and waters. Thanks to the determination and creativity of tribes and our legal team, our administration stayed decades-long litigation and has solidified a 20-year path for the Upper Columbia United Tribes to pursue the eventual reintroduction of salmon into the Upper Columbia River. These historic agreements, thank you. These historic agreements are powered by over $1 billion in funding for restoration initiatives. This once-in-a-generation progress has opened meaningful paths forward for both the salmon and the people who rely on them. It has demonstrated the very best of the federal government working for the American people. Senior advisor to the solicitor, Laura Bloomer, a 2019 Harvard Law graduate, helped us reach these historic achievements and is leading the hard work of implementing the commitments made. Generations of children will grow up with healthier waterways and a stronger connection to the lands and waters that can sustain them because of her efforts. Laura, I'm so happy you could join us today. Everyone give it up for Laura. I am so honored to call the three of you my colleagues. You are incredible, and I am forever grateful for your service. As you can see, Harvard Law graduates are doing big, exciting, and powerful things at the department. They're creating a legacy that will live on long after our tenures at the department are over, and no matter who is in charge. Let these individuals inspire you to seize your newfound power, your influence, your hearts, and your expertise, and put it to good use. Good use that will outlive each of us. Good use that will ensure future generations can live the prosperous lives they deserve. Good use that will make you proud to be a lawyer, because we can't build the world we deserve without each of you. Be grateful for the gifts in the universe that have been prepared just for you, so that you can re-gift. And remember that you are part of a community today and every day that is rooting for your success. Congratulations to the 2024 graduating class. I'm so proud of each of you. Dawa, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.